the next 2 days, the likes of former President Kgalema Motlanthe, Judge Albi Sachs and struggle veteran Ahmed Kathrada will join other speakers at the conference on reporting on race. The event will focus on, among other things, how to report on race constructively, the criminalisation of racism and freedom of speech. This year, the country had quite a number of race-related incidents. And to tell us more, we are joined in studio by Faiza Abrahams-Smith from the Institute for the Advancement of Journalism. It's so lovely to have you in studio. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me.
So when we look at the role that media is currently playing on reporting on race, what is it like? How would you describe it?
Well, there's a lot of gaps, Leanne. Journalists are in a rush. There's very few journalists left specializing in certain areas. Journalists are covering all areas available. And so what you have, we cover an incident when it happens. It then gets edited, and sometimes the headlines don't match the content of the story. At times, journalists will give the highlights, but they don't put content to it. It's almost like if a story breaks on social media.
Yeah.
You still need journalists to investigate. You still need journalists to find the relevant sources. And at all times, journalists need to try and balance the story best as they can. We have a very fragmented society, and you have an audience that receives the story but interprets it very differently. So it's important for us to start looking at how best we can do our storytelling, how best we can cover these issues pertaining to race.
Since the advent of social media, and I just want to pick up on the issue of social media, do you think in a way that our journalism has improved, or has it deteriorated? Do you think that journalists somehow have become a little bit lazy due to social media?
Yeah, I might put my neck on the line here, but I think at times when I pick up the newspapers across the board, it's the same story.
Yeah.
I don't find anything different. For example, if there's a presentation in Parliament on any issue, you'll have 10 journalists phoning you. And at that point, I ask myself, where's their database? And one of the thing for this conference is to give journalists access to more resource people.
Yeah.
And for journalists to understand that there's a vast array of people they can interview, and they can come from different angles, and they can tell the story in different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
That's the idea.
Yes. So social media can break a story, but journalists can further tell the story and inform people.
Which is the role of, everybody wants to find out the role of newspapers in this day and age when you've got social media. And that really is the role. I mean, it's just to take that story further, find another angle, dig deeper into what's going on so that, you're still relevant. I want to, however, focus more on the race side of things now, the reporting on race. What responsibility do journalists have when reporting on race?
They need to be sensitive. They need to be responsible, and they need to find a balance. And I'll give you an example of why I'm saying that. We had a few incidents over the last 2 years regarding race. When Penny Sparrow made her comments, it was tweeting everywhere, there were blogs everywhere, it was in every newspaper. Then we had the incident of Vilapi Kumalo, Department of Arts and Culture, and his response, it wasn't picked up that widely. Now, are we saying that if certain people make certain comments, we run with it endlessly?
Yeah.
And if certain people make certain comments, we let it lie. Yeah. They get forgiven. I think everyone needs to be responsible. We need to think, we need to engage, and we need to know what we're putting out into the public sphere.
Yeah.
And we also need to be able to deal with what comes back to us. So at all times, we need to make sure the story is balanced.
Have courses in journalism evolved? Since the days pre-social media, where suddenly everybody's got a voice. I mean, it's one thing me sitting over a cup of tea. Let's just peek into Penny Sparrow's life for 1 second. She's telling her friend, and perhaps it ends there. But now Penny Sparrow has got Facebook, and she puts it on Facebook, and that one friend becomes another million people, if not more. And now, I mean, she's used as a reference for the whole story when it comes to race. Have things changed?
Leanne, I think we are faced with huge challenges. A lot of people don't fully understand the power of social media. I can talk to you on Facebook, you talk to someone else, but once we've posted something, there's no stopping it.
Yeah.
There's no control of where it goes and what happens thereafter. Regarding race, I work for the Institute for Journalism. We're 24 years in existence this year, June. Not much has changed in training journalists in the field. There's been a huge retrenchment of journalists in media houses, as we all are fully aware. And that's why I'm saying journalists are thinly spread. But at the same time, a lot of journalists aren't given the time off to go for training. We do deliver a number of training courses, but race and ethnicity is not one of them. And we are hosting this conference in partnership with Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, hoping the outcome of it will spur more debate, more discussions in the right way.
Yeah.
So we still do the traditional media training, but there's new areas and avenues that need to be trained. There's also much younger journalists in the field, and a lot of journalists don't have access to coaches or mentors any longer.
Yeah, which is an important aspect, and it is needed. There's so much to talk about. That's why I can imagine that today is going to be so interesting with the likes of Kgalema Motlanthe, Judge Albi Sachs, Ahmed Kathrada, just to name a few. One aspect that's also going to be touched on, in fact, there's just two last questions I need to speak to you about, is the issue of the criminalisation of racism. That's something that's going to be touched on as well. It was spoken about widely this year, especially after some of these incidences that we've been hearing about, and individuals that have been held accountable for what they have said. What is your take on it?
There's different views on that. I'm not for criminalisation of it. We're going to have an interesting debate tomorrow, because throughout the 2 days we're having panelists, we've got speakers, but we also have respondents on this. And I don't think it should be criminalized. I think that people should be allowed to express themselves, to have open debates, and to engage. But criminalization will be another form of censorship.
That's going to be an interesting debate, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that will be for the criminalization.
We have different views on it.
Oh yes, I can imagine. That's what's going to be discussed. And then finally, that last issue I want to talk on is, oh my gosh, can you believe it? It's actually fallen out of my mind. And it's such an important issue that you're going to be talking about. And here I can't even think about it. No, you've got to help me out here. There's one more aspect that's going, media freedom. Oh my gosh, how could I forget about that? Particularly when it comes to Black Wednesday. I know you were talking about that. That's one thing that's going to be spoken about. I mean, here at the SABC, and I mean, everybody knew about the fact of banning visuals of things that were going on. That, of course, has since been turned around, and we do show that. But that just showed you how people were not in favor of that. That is one thing that people feel very sacred about, and that's the freedom of media. That's going to be discussed.
I think that's important, because we should never forget Black Wednesday, 1977, when media were banned. I think it's important that citizens see what happens at all times, and we should give them the credibility and have faith in them that they can make their own informed decisions. But we should not decide what is good for them to have access to and to view and not to view.
Interesting 2 days lying ahead. Where is it taking place?
It's at the Mancosa building in Auckland Park. They've sponsored the venue. So
and if people want to follow it in any way, how do they follow this conference?
It will be on Twitter. There'll be live streaming. There'll be blogging. They'll be on the website.
Excellent. All right, so you'll be able to follow it wherever you are, but I'm sure that hashtag racism, reporting on race is going to be what you should follow, and you'll be able to pick up some of the speakers and the things that are being discussed there. Faiza Abrahams-Smith, thank you very, very much for joining us here on the program. From the Institute of the Advancement of Journalism, that conference taking place today. Watch social media and you'll be able to find out everything that's being discussed there. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this. Stay tuned.